Micro, small and medium enterprises have been identified as the engine of many economies for Nigeria. They also play a vital role by contributing significantly to employment generation, poverty reduction, and even overall economic growth. They also account for about 80% of employment and over 40% of gross domestic product. According to the NBS, the total number of MSMEs as of 2020 stood at 39,654,385, and this number is actually growing, with macro enterprises constituting about 96.9% and SMEs making up 3.1%. This morning, Abiodun Kayode-Alli, Senior Manager, Tax and Regulatory Service, PwC Nigeria, joins me to unpack this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Leko.
So looking at the numbers that I just rolled out, we're looking at it in the millions. Can MSMEs in Nigeria break even based on the survey?
Yes, they actually can, despite the fact that there is a lot of hurdles. All right, there is a lot of obstacles that they have to go through. But yes, definitely they can. Considering the fact that we've been studying what they've been going through, the challenges they've been encountering right from the pandemic period, pre-COVID period, and also given the fact that we've been trying to understand the key drivers for their performances and also what policymakers can do to impact on their businesses. We do believe that they actually can, and it's even the intention of the government that they actually do in order to achieve the target set for 2030, that is the target of attaining a $1 trillion economy. So I think with the right policy framework as well as the right macroeconomic environment, I do believe they stand a good chance of growing.
Before we even start talking about policy framework on what can be done, let's even look at the sectors that can be heavily impacted and can bring about appreciable turnaround. Now, from your report, looking at that outlook, a survey of 567 MSMEs are said to be operating in 13 activity sectors. So which of these look promising, and what factors would you say would aid their sustainability?
Yeah, okay, so thank you very much for that question. So basically the sectors that you would see a lot of growth, similar to what we have in the macroeconomy. You're looking at the finance sector, right? You're also looking at the retail sector, right? These are sectors that are very key to our daily livelihood with respect to trade, with respect to buying and selling, and also with respect to small financing and at a small scale, right? So these are sectors that seem to be doing quite well. Basically, these are sectors that also they have their foundation on some of the inventions, right, with respect to technology, with respect to the digital economy, being able to make use of social media platforms to actually carry out your trade, right, and being able to use technology with respect to fintechs, being able to transact right online. So these are some of the sectors that are thriving. If you look at most of the traditional sectors that have to do with physical presence, those sectors have actually struggled, right? Especially where you have to go to your place of work, commute, take transport, given the fact that there is a high cost of transportation stemming from the backdrop of the removal of fuel subsidy, right? So, and also sectors that have to do with electricity, right? So a lot of small businesses have encountered challenges with the high cost of power. So those sectors are the ones that are actually struggling. So that's just a summary of what we've seen.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you talked about poor electricity. There are also issues around inadequate access to finance, and what we also have seen in terms of multiplicity of taxes among others, these MSMEs is actually hindering their growth. These are some of the challenges that you highlighted a couple of minutes ago. Then, if you are to talk about policies now, what kind of policies can counteract against these issues that I just mentioned?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So first and foremost, the major problem for most MSMEs has to do with access to finance, right? Given the fact that a lot of them are struggling to have collateral, which is a requirement for most of the traditional lenders, and even given the fact that a lot of them don't have that credit worthiness. So policies that would play that would do a lot of good to them right now would be those that are centered around access to finance, right? We do know that the federal government has come up with lots of plans, lots of loans given at a reduced cost to these particular MSMEs, but the truth is that not all of them have access to these particular loans, right? Being offered by either the government or development finance institutions. So I think one key thing that will be important is for financiers as well as the government to try and come up with accessible funds, and also to come up with special products that would actually meet their needs, right? So some of them, you don't have to necessarily look into going through the traditional bank. There could be a form of other alternatives, right? Such as peer-to-peer lending that could be provided to them, as well as education. This would go a long way to help. Then also, if you then focus on those who are actually collecting these loans from the traditional banks, there is a high interest environment. I mean, it's something that is well known, given the fact that the Monetary Authority are trying to stem inflation through their monetary policy tools. It's also impacting on these MSMEs, and it's very difficult for them to obtain financing from traditional lending, right? So if you go to other forms of infrastructure that could be helpful to them, things like electricity, right? The government has come up with different innovations, such as the Electricity Act of 2023. We think beyond that, the implementation has been somewhat slow. We think a lot more needs to be done with respect to working with the private sector to actually attract lots of investments in that area, because the alternative to which most of these MSMEs have relied on in terms of power, going to diesel and petrol, the costs are also high, given the high international cost of energy in the international market, right? So I think a lot more needs to be done with respect to implementation of some of these measures that the government has promised, right? And also the government needs to do a lot with respect to collapsing facilities, such as we know that most of the time we've been experiencing power grid failures, right? So a lot more needs to be done with respect to some of these infrastructure that we have. And as long as we can tackle things like transport as well, that will go a long way in ensuring they're able to move products from one place to another. So I think these are some of the things the government can do in addition to some of the promises they've made with respect to creating or making available cheaper and more efficient forms of transport like that of the CNG.
Let's now look at the small-scale entrepreneurs and what they can also do to surmount their challenges. According to a report, over 50% of surveyed MSMEs experienced a decline in demand for their products or maybe services, and this is attributed to higher retail prices and low purchasing power of customers. Well, you can't blame the customers anyway, because everybody's actually feeling the pang of the economic policies of government in the country. But then for these business owners now, what do you think they can do within their own ecosystem to address these challenges?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lekon. So there's going to be a lot of innovation that needs to come on their part, right? So most of, like the report said, most of the causes or what they've experienced with respect to declining demand has to do with the purchasing power, the weakening purchasing power of consumers, right? And also the high cost. So I think one thing that can be done has to do with finding ways to innovate, right? To reduce their cost, right? Areas whereby they can kind of focus on cost saving measures that will help to reduce the cost of the products that they're actually selling, right? Then also I think from a government perspective, a lot can be done with respect to the cost of items being imported, the removal of regulatory bottlenecks, which also impacts on the final cost of these products that are being sold. Then with respect to reducing the cost themselves of the individuals, the small and medium scale businesses, I think one other key thing they can do is to make use of technology, leverage on digital platform to actually sell and market their products, because these are some of the measures that actually helped us during the time of the pandemic, right? The awareness of digital platforms in making trade, buying and selling. I think these are some of the things that can be done. And one more time, with respect to governments trying to avoid policies that would actually impact on them negatively. If we remember back in 2022, towards the end of the year, there were policies that the government put up with respect to running a cashless economy, right? Whereby most of these businesses could at least survive. There was also the policy whereby Twitter was being banned, right? And this actually impacted in a lot of businesses who actually rely on this platform to do their work. So I think if government is able to help in all these regards and also simplify most of the regulatory frameworks with respect to taxation, with respect to business registration, I think this will go a long way in reducing the cost of these businesses, and they are able to sell products that are cheaper and affordable to the public.
Okay, so finally, we look at the issue around funding for these businesses and alternative solutions whereby they can raise funds to scale up their businesses. We know that there are global headwinds. Investors are not too confident about the economic instability in the country. And you also mentioned taxes, multiple taxes, tax hikes, looking at the NPR, looking at the rates. So when it comes to funding and the challenges now, what do you think is the easiest, quickest, and the safest way out? Just in about a minute.
Yeah, so basically, like most of the respondents in that survey had said, personal finance, relying on close network like family, right, as being the quickest, right? So the expectation is that as you look inward to finance and fund your business, it's expected that over time you can then begin to gradually scale by expanding and making use of other payment platforms, right? There are different platforms and there are different products that are being sold by financial institutions currently that can actually help, and they give these loans at interest rates that are quite friendly, right? Okay. So I think initially businesses should begin to look inward, and with time, as time goes, then they can begin to look at other means of obtaining finance, right? So, and also I think development financial institutions can help in here. So these are the thoughts I think that SMEs can actually look into.
All right, thank you very much, Abiodun Kayode-Alli, Senior Manager, Tax and Regulatory Service, PwC Nigeria, for your time. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Lekon.